I know the internet can be pretty harsh sometimes, especially with relationship posts like these. Trust me, I've seen how brutal the comments can get, so I'm really hoping you all can be understanding. Before I get into everything that's happening, let me give you a quick introduction. I'm Aaron, 30 years old, and working in the legal field. The past month has basically turned my entire life upside down, and I really need some outside perspective on what I should do next. Marcus and I had what I thought was a perfect marriage. 4 years of building a life together, supporting each other through everything, job changes, family drama, even that time we had to live with his parents for 3 months while our house was being renovated. We were that couple who everyone said would make it. Even during our worst arguments, we'd always find a way to work things out together. Usually over late night ice cream and stupid movies. That's what made his cheating accusations so shocking. He suddenly started claiming he had proof I was unfaithful, saying it was bound to happen because I work in a male-dominated legal department. This coming from the same man who used to proudly tell everyone how his wife was breaking barriers in her field. The way it all started still feels surreal. 2 weeks ago, he came home looking completely crushed. I remember I was cooking his favorite pasta, thinking we'd have a nice dinner together. Instead, he just mumbled something about needing space and went straight to bed. I figured maybe he lost a big client at work or had a rough meeting. He's always been the type to process things alone before talking about them, so I gave him his space. Never in a million years did I imagine what was actually going through his mind. If I had known, maybe I could have stopped this whole mess before it spiraled out of control. The next day Marcus was gone before sunrise, something he'd never done in 4 years of marriage. Just a cold text saying he was running late and had done all the work. At first, I tried to rationalize it. Plus, this was the guy who'd never miss our morning coffee routine. He even bought us matching mugs that said grumpy before coffee. But then 3 days passed, and things got worse. He'd stumble home after midnight, completely drunk, him, who usually only had a beer or two at most. One night he even knocked over our wedding photos and just left them there on the floor. Marcus, yeah, I should probably mention his name now, started sleeping in the guest room. The same room we'd spent weeks decorating together for visitors, now became his escape from me. I'd hear him come home late, grab his things, and shut that door without a word. Missing him at home was one thing, but he even disappeared on weekends, the time we usually spent grocery shopping together and trying new breakfast places. I kept waiting for him to snap out of it, but deep down, this growing distance felt like watching our marriage slip through my fingers. I wanted to talk to him, figure out what was happening, but how do you confront someone who's become a ghost in their own home? I decided to try our old lunch surprise routine, the one where I'd show up at his office with his favorite takeout. We used to do this every other week before all this started. He'd always get excited seeing me walk in with food from that Vietnamese place he loves. His coworkers used to joke about how we were still in our honeymoon phase. So I left work early, got his usual order, plus those spring rolls he can never resist, and headed to his office. When I got there, his coworker gave me some excuse about Marcus being too busy for lunch. But then I saw them both at the cafe across the street, sitting there laughing like everything was normal. I just stood there, holding that stupid takeout bag, watching my husband actively avoid me. I spent the whole drive home crying in my car in the parking lot of our favorite grocery store, the one where we had our first date because he claimed he needed help picking ripe avocados. That night, all I got was a text saying he was staying at a friend's. The next morning though, he finally showed up. For a second, seeing him walk in with a file, I actually thought maybe it was work stuff he wanted to discuss. But no. Right there in our living room, he dropped divorce papers on the coffee table. Already signed. Just waiting for my signature. 4 years of marriage, of building a life together, and he was ending it all with a stack of papers that looked like they came straight from a printer. When I pressed him about why he wanted a divorce, he just sat there silently at first. This man who used to talk through everything with me, who'd stay up all night discussing our smallest disagreements, wouldn't even look me in the eye. Then suddenly he exploded, saying he regretted ever marrying me and that I'd destroyed him. The worst part came next. He accused me of cheating with multiple men from my office. Me, who still has the movie ticket stub from our first date in my wallet. Me, who changed jobs last year because the commute meant less time with him. For 4 straight days, I tried everything to prove my innocence. I offered him my phone, my work email, my laptop, literally my entire digital life. I even told him to talk to anyone at my workplace. His big proof? A bunch of photos that made my completely normal interactions look suspicious. There was one of me hugging Kyle from accounting at his farewell party, The same party Marcus couldn't attend because of his business trip. Another showed me having coffee with Jeremy, my best friend since law school, at our usual spot. The photo was taken from this weird angle that made our casual conversation look intimate. Mind you, Jeremy is the same guy who helped Marcus plan his proposal to me, and whose girlfriend usually joins us for these coffee meetups. The photos look like they were deliberately taken to create drama. But Marcus, who knows every single one of these people, who's had dinners with them, was suddenly seeing everything with completely different eyes. I actually started laughing when he showed me these photos, because the whole thing was so ridiculous. The coffee shop picture? Jeremy's girlfriend Sandra showed up literally 5 minutes later. We were just waiting for her because she was stuck in traffic. Sandra and I even went shopping afterward and bought matching plant pots. And those office photos? I'm one of 3 women in a department of 20 people. Of course I interact with male colleagues. Just last month Marcus was bragging to his family about how I was handling major cases and working directly with senior partners. He used to be so proud of my career, even helped me prepare for big meetings. Now suddenly every professional interaction was suspicious. It's like he forgot all those times he came to office parties and met everyone himself. But nothing I said mattered anymore. He just kept pushing those divorce papers toward me, saying he wanted me out of his life. I showed him everything, my phone, my messages, my emails. I even offered to call Sandra right then to confirm everything. But he'd completely shut down, like he'd already decided what to believe. Then came the final blow. He gave me 48 hours to get out of our house. The same house we spent months hunting for, where we stayed up all night painting walls and arguing about furniture placement. Now he was threatening legal action if I didn't leave. 2 days to prove my innocence, to save my marriage, and to somehow make sense of how my life had imploded so completely. How do you even start packing up 4 years of marriage in 48 hours? The whole time, something about these photos felt off. They were too perfectly timed, too perfectly angled, like someone was following me around waiting for any interaction they could twist. When I finally discovered who was behind it all, everything clicked into place. It was Adriana, Marcus's supposed best friend from college. I found out by doing something I never thought I would, checking his phone while he was in the bathroom. In my defense, when your entire marriage is falling apart and you're about to be kicked out of your own home, desperate times call for desperate measures. Plus, this was the same phone I used to help him set up, the one where we'd share funny memes and photos of dogs we wanted to adopt someday. Those 5 minutes scrolling through his messages were enough to make me angry. There was Adriana, systematically poisoning Marcus's mind against me. Message after message questioning everything about my life. What kind of wife meets male friends for coffee? Don't you think it's suspicious she chose to work in a male-dominated field? She'd send these little comments daily, planting seeds of doubt. The worst part? I used to invite her over for dinner, tried to include her in our lives because I knew how important she was to Marcus. I even defended her when my friends said she seemed weirdly possessive of him. Now here she was, methodically trying to destroy my marriage, and my husband was eating up every word like it was gospel truth. After seeing those messages, I grabbed my keys and drove straight to Adriana's house. You know, the one Marcus helped her move into last year because that's what best friends do. But before I get into what went down there, let me explain why I wasn't exactly surprised that Adriana was behind all this. The tension between us goes way back to when Marcus and I first started dating. From day one, she made it painfully obvious that she disapproved of me. I still remember our first meeting at a cafe. I reached out to shake her hand and she looked at me like I was something stuck to the bottom of her shoe. Right in front of me, she asked Marcus if he was really sure about dating someone like me. At our engagement party, she spent the whole night making backhanded comments about how quickly we were moving. Even at our wedding, she showed up late, gave this weird speech about how she'd always be there for Marcus, and left early. Everyone saw through her act except Marcus. I always suspected she had feelings for him, but whenever I brought it up, Marcus would just laugh it off and say they were like siblings. He'd tell me stories about how they grew up together, shared classes, and how she was just protective. Now I was seeing exactly how protective she could be. I should have seen this coming. The night before our wedding, she actually cornered Marcus at our rehearsal dinner and told him he'd regret marrying me. Marcus mentioned it casually the next morning while we were getting ready, laughing it off as classic Sam being overprotective. I remember feeling uneasy but pushed it aside because, well, it was my wedding day. 4 years later, here we are, her prediction becoming a self-fulfilling prophecy, not because I did anything wrong, but because she'd been playing the long game, waiting for the perfect moment to swoop in and claim Marcus for herself. All those times she'd show up at our house unannounced, claiming she was just in the neighborhood, suddenly made sense. When I got to her place, she initially pretended she wasn't home, real mature for someone who'd just blown up my entire life. But the moment I mentioned Marcus was divorcing me, that door flew open faster than you'd believe. The smug look on her face made my skin crawl. Standing in her doorway, surrounded by photos of her and Marcus from college, seriously, who keeps that many photos of their friend? I cut straight to the chase and asked her why she'd manipulated him with lies about me cheating. Her response? I'm just trying to save my best friend from a toxic relationship. Save him? From what? Our weekly game nights? Our plans to start a family? She stood there, acting all righteous, like she was doing Marcus some kind of favor by destroying our marriage. I kept trying to explain to Adriana that her proof was just normal moments from my life twisted to look suspicious, but she wasn't having it. She actually stood there and told me I should just let Marcus go, like she was doing everyone a favor. The weird part was how she kept referring to their future, not his future, their future. When I finally asked her straight up if she had feelings for my husband, she got super defensive. He's like my brother, she said, but the way she practically slammed the door in my face said otherwise. This is the same woman who cried at our wedding, not happy tears, mind you, and now she's orchestrating its end. Back home, I tried one last time with Marcus. The conversation still replays in my head. I asked him why he never once came to me with his doubts, why he let Adriana feed him these stories without even questioning them. His response? I trust Adriana more than you. Just like that, 4 years of marriage meant less than his college friend's word. Now I'm sitting here in our house, well, I guess it's his house now, with boxes half packed and 24 hours left before I have to leave. The same house where we spent our first Christmas together, where we talked about having kids someday. I know I'm innocent, but somehow I still feel guilty, like maybe I could have done something differently. I've tried everything I can think of to prove my innocence, but it's like talking to a wall. I really need advice here. What would you do if your spouse trusted their friend more than their own partner? How do you fight against someone who's spent years plotting your downfall? I'm completely lost and could use any suggestions. Update 1. Hey everyone, coming back with an update after a few weeks. First off, I'm genuinely overwhelmed by all the support in my DMs and comments. Reading your stories and advice has given me some hope during my 3 a.m. crying sessions, which have become less frequent, thankfully. Special shout out to the person who sent me that care package with chocolate and wine. You're an actual angel. Though I have to address something real quick, to the keyboard warrior in my comments claiming I'm making this up, seriously? I've spent the last 4 years building a life with Marcus, planning our future, dealing with his mom's passive-aggressive comments about when we're having kids, and working my way up in my career. I don't need to prove myself to random internet strangers who probably can't even maintain a houseplant. Now for the actual update. I know it's only been a few weeks since my last post, but so much has happened that I need to share. Honestly, I wasn't planning to post again so soon. I've been trying to keep busy with work and processing everything, but seeing how many people reached out with similar stories about toxic friendships ruining their relationships made me realize I'm not alone in this mess. Plus, with everything that's happened recently, I definitely need some outside perspective again. These past 2 weeks have been surreal. I'm currently crashing at my friend Chelsea's place. She's been an absolute saint through all of this. When I showed up at her door at 11 p.m. with 3 suitcases and mascara running down my face, she just pulled me into a hug and made up her guest room without asking questions. She even helped me start apartment hunting, though honestly, I still can't believe I'm looking for a new place to live. It feels like just yesterday Marcus and I were arguing about what color to paint our bedroom walls. I won that argument. By the way, sage green was definitely the right choice. So here's where things get interesting, and by interesting, I mean straight out of a bad drama series. I had to go back to our house to grab my laptop and other electronics because there's only so much you can pack when your husband gives you 48 hours to vacate your entire life. As I'm walking up to the house, guess who I see leaving? Adriana, looking way too comfortable in my former home, with some mystery woman I'd never seen before. They were probably there to comfort poor Marcus, you know, the guy who supposedly got cheated on by his evil wife who checks notes dared to have male colleagues and friends. The way they were acting, you'd think Marcus was some wounded hero rather than a grown man who chose to believe his manipulative friend over his wife of 4 years. Going back into that house felt like entering a parallel universe. Marcus wouldn't even look at me, the same guy who used to text me heart emojis from upstairs when we were both working from home. I tried keeping it strictly business, just there for my stuff, but I couldn't help wondering about this mystery woman who'd left with Adriana. Marcus practically ran upstairs when I walked in, like I was some kind of virus he might catch. 4 years of marriage reduced to awkwardly collecting my things while my husband hides from me. I even had to leave behind our shared photo albums because I couldn't handle having that conversation. Chelsea kept telling me I was torturing myself by obsessing over who this woman was, that I needed to focus on healing and moving forward. But then 3 days later, she came home from her lunch break with news. She'd seen Marcus near his office with some woman, and they definitely weren't having a professional meeting. They were sitting close together at that little Italian place where Marcus and I had our 3rd anniversary dinner just months ago. Chelsea said they looked comfortable together, you know, that kind of comfort that takes time to develop. When I asked her to describe the woman, hoping it wasn't who I thought it was, Chelsea just shook her head. The divorce papers weren't even processed yet, and here he was, already moving on like our marriage meant nothing. The same man who once said he couldn't sleep without hearing me say goodnight was now having cozy lunch dates while I was still wearing my wedding ring. That night I stress-bought ice cream and headed to the grocery store, trying to distract myself from everything. Instead, the universe decided to fuck me over. There was Marcus with the same woman from our house. My brain knew I should just grab my Ben & Jerry's and leave, but my feet had other plans. I followed them, not my proudest moment, but hey, we all do crazy things when our world falls apart. They ended up at Memorial Park, where Marcus proposed to me during the winter festival. And there they were, kissing on the same bench where we used to share our lunch breaks. I don't even remember running away, just ended up back in my car hyperventilating. I couldn't leave it alone though. I borrowed Chelsea's phone since Marcus had blocked mine. Real mature, right? When I called and asked about this woman, his response felt like another slap in the face. He was actually proud to tell me he was dating her, saying she was helping him heal from his trauma. Trauma? From what? Our movie nights and Sunday brunches? She's Adriana's cousin. That's right. While I was being accused of cheating, Adriana was playing matchmaker with her cousin. Marcus had the nerve to call it karma, like somehow him jumping into a new relationship before our divorce is even final was justified because of things I never even did. The same man who couldn't handle me having coffee with my male best friend was now dating his best friend's cousin, who conveniently showed up right when our marriage started falling apart. After that phone call, I swore I was done with Marcus and his drama. Deleted his number, unfriended his family on social media, the whole post-breakup routine. But then I stumbled onto something that changed everything. Turns out Rachel, that's Adriana's cousin, is pregnant, and suddenly all these puzzle pieces started falling into place. The rushed divorce, the quick new relationship, it all makes sense if Marcus got her pregnant and needed a clean break from our marriage. Real convenient how I became the supposed cheater right when he needed an exit strategy. I know all this because I did something slightly crazy. After seeing them together that day, I followed Rachel. Yeah, I know, I'm turning into some amateur detective these days. But instead of going home, she went straight to Adriana's place. I ended up outside their window, trust me, I know how this sounds, and caught bits of their conversation. He'll get to know soon and this is all going to come to an end and something about my child. I couldn't catch everything. Turns out real life surveillance isn't as clear as it is in movies, especially when you're trying not to look suspicious crouching behind someone's hydrangeas. But what I did here was enough to make my head spin. Now I'm back at Chelsea's place, staring at the ceiling, trying to figure out what to do with this information. My marriage imploded because I had male friends, but Marcus might have actually gotten another woman pregnant? The irony would be funny if it wasn't my life. Anyone dealt with something like this before? Because I'm completely lost here. Update 2. Hey everyone, back with another update after what feels like the longest week of my life. First off, major thanks for all the support on my last post. Your comments and messages have kept me going through some really dark nights. I haven't been sleeping much lately, you know that fun thing where your brain decides 3 a.m. is the perfect time to replay every moment of your failed marriage? Yeah, that's been my routine. But your support has helped me stay focused on fighting for myself instead of just curling up in Chelsea's guest room forever with my ice cream and rom-coms. So here's the thing about trying to move on. Just when you think you're making progress, life don't work as planned. Everyone who read my last post knows about Rachel's pregnancy, and I was convinced it was Marcus's baby. I mean, it made sense, right? Guy suddenly accuses faithful wife of cheating, moves on suspiciously fast with new girlfriend. Girlfriend turns out to be pregnant. It's like a bad Lifetime movie plot. But turns out, the truth is even messier than I imagined. This whole situation has more layers than that lasagna Marcus's mom used to make at Christmas, which, by the way, was always way too dry, but I was too nice to say anything. Looking back at my first encounter with Rachel, some things didn't add up. Everyone was acting like she was far along enough in her pregnancy for it to be some urgent situation with Marcus, but she didn't show any signs at all. Not even the little things I'd noticed when my sister was pregnant. No water bottle constantly at hand, no careful way of sitting, nothing. The whole thing felt off. Like when you know someone's lying but can't prove it yet. So I decided to do some detective work. Yes, I've become that person who follows people around, definitely not how I imagined spending my time after separation. I borrowed my coworker's car, told her I needed it for a surprise party planning, and followed Rachel and Adriana one afternoon. They went to Valley View Maternity Clinic, which confirmed Rachel was actually pregnant. But it was just a first-month checkup. The timing made zero sense for this to be Marcus's baby, considering when they started dating. After their appointment, they headed to that new bistro downtown. I waited a few minutes, walked in wearing sunglasses and a hat like some B-movie spy, and managed to get the table right behind them. The host gave me a weird look when I insisted on sitting with my back to them, but whatever, desperate times. And let me tell you, the conversation I overheard was worth every awkward moment of pretending to be deeply interested in my menu for an hour straight. Turns out Adriana wasn't just trying to break up my marriage out of some weird obsession with Marcus, she was running a full-on con with her cousin. She's apparently drowning in debt, something about failed investments and maxed out credit cards, and instead of getting a financial advisor like a normal person, she cooked up this whole scheme. Rachel was just her pawn in this mess. They were planning to manipulate Marcus into thinking he got Rachel pregnant during some drunken night that never actually happened. Rachel actually seemed uncomfortable with the whole thing, kept saying Marcus was too nice for this kind of manipulation. But Adriana, being the master manipulator she is, kept pushing, saying it was their only option for financial security. Their entire plan came out over overpriced pasta and wine, which, by the way, Rachel wasn't drinking, at least she's committed to the pregnancy act. They were going to wait until Rachel was showing a bit more, then convince Marcus that one night when he was too drunk to remember clearly, something happened between them. The timeline wouldn't add up if anyone looked too closely, but they were counting on Marcus being too honorable to question it. Adriana had it all mapped out. Once Marcus married Rachel, they'd have access to his savings and that inheritance he got from his grandfather last year. The same inheritance we were planning to use as a down payment on our dream house. The whole time I'm sitting there, gripping my water glass so hard I thought it might shatter, listening to them plan how to scam the man I still technically call my husband. Adriana wasn't just trying to steal my husband anymore, she was trying to steal his entire future. Just when I thought this story couldn't get more twisted, there was another thing. Apparently, Rachel's ex-fiancé dumped her after finding out about the pregnancy, and instead of dealing with that mess, Adriana decided to use Marcus as their backup plan. Real classy. But here's where it gets interesting. 3 days after I overheard their conversation, guess who shows up at Chelsea's door looking like a lost puppy? Marcus. Standing there with our favorite takeout and begging me not to sign the divorce papers. The same man who couldn't even look at me 2 weeks ago was suddenly talking about reconciliation and how he still believes in us. The reason for this complete 180? Remember me sitting in that restaurant pretending to be fascinated by my phone? Well, I wasn't just scrolling through Instagram, I was recording everything. Yeah, I know it's probably not the most ethical thing, but desperate times and all that. I emailed the whole conversation to Marcus that same night. At first, he tried to deny it, claiming I'd somehow faked the recording, because apparently I'm both a cheater and an audio editing expert. But then he confronted them, and oh boy, did things get messy. Marcus, who's known Adriana since college, finally seeing her true colors. She actually tried to spin some story about doing it all for his own good, but that fell apart pretty quickly. Rachel broke down and confessed everything. Marcus went full lawyer mode on them, threatening legal action for defamation and fraud. Turns out the prospect of paying damages they couldn't afford was enough to send them running. These two women who'd been so confident about their little scheme just disappeared, no dramatic showdown, no tearful apologies, just gone when they realized their plan had backfired. But before all that, Marcus still tried to turn it around on me. He actually suggested that I doctor the recording because I was desperate to get him back. Yeah, because that makes total sense. I had to spell it out for him. His precious best friend and her cousin were trying to scam him out of his inheritance and savings. The same money we once talked about using to start our family. It took him way too long to finally see the truth. So now here's my dilemma, and I really need your honest opinions. Marcus wants to reconcile. He keeps sending these long texts about how sorry he is and how he should have trusted me. But I can't forget how quickly he turned on me. 4 years of marriage, and he chose to believe Adriana's lies over my truth. He didn't even try to talk to me about his suspicions, just went straight to divorce papers and kicking me out. Sure, he was manipulated, but doesn't his reaction say something about how much he actually trusts me? Would you take back someone who threw away your entire marriage based on his friend's word? Final update. Hello everyone. Yep, the woman whose husband almost left her for a fake pregnancy scheme is back with one final update. For those just joining this soap opera, check my post history. Because this last update is wild. Sorry for going MIA for a month, I've been busy setting up my new place and honestly just processing everything. I'm finally feeling settled in my new apartment, which, by the way, has this amazing kitchen that Marcus would have hated, when guess who shows up at my door looking desperate? Adriana and Rachel. These two had the audacity to come to my place after everything they did. But instead of slamming the door in their faces like any normal person would, I had a better idea. They were broke, desperate, and needed work, and my petty side saw an opportunity for some sweet revenge. So I hired them as my housekeepers. I'm trying so hard not to laugh while typing this. You know how they say revenge is best served cold? Well, mine came with a side of cleaning supplies and a whole lot of karma. Let me tell you exactly how I turned these wannabe con artists into my personal cleaning crew. The absolute audacity of these two showing up at my door still blows my mind. There's Adriana, who spent months plotting to destroy my marriage, and Rachel, who was ready to trap my husband with a fake pregnancy story, standing there looking like sad puppies. They actually had the nerve to ask me to help convince Marcus to forgive them because he'll listen to you now that he feels guilty. Right, because that's exactly what you do after you wreck someone's life, ask them for favors. They kept saying they'd do anything to make it up to me. Anything? Now that got my attention. I was sitting there in my half-unpacked apartment, still surrounded by moving boxes, including the one with all our wedding photos that I still haven't decided what to do with, when this beautifully petty idea hit me. I told them I'd consider helping them if they worked as my personal housekeepers. You should have seen Adriana's face, this woman who used to act like she was too good to even sit at the same table as me, now being offered a job cleaning my toilets. The best part? She was so desperate she couldn't even hesitate. Remember how she used to brag about her designer bags and fancy brunches? Now she's scrubbing my floors with those same manicured hands. Both of them started the next day, bright and early, looking like they'd rather be anywhere else. I may have gone a little overboard with the cleaning supplies shopping, but hey, if you're going to get revenge, might as well make it sparkle. I actually started feeling a bit sorry for Rachel. It was pretty clear she was just another victim of Adriana's manipulation. The same way Adriana had played Marcus, she'd been playing her own cousin, dragging her into this mess. After a week of intense cleaning, I may have been extra picky about baseboards and window tracks, they were both at their breaking point. Then came the day that made it all worth it. Rachel accidentally knocked over a bucket of water that splashed all over Adriana's expensive shoes, the ones she probably bought with credit card debt, and everything exploded. Suddenly my living room turned into a WWE ring. Adriana completely lost it, slapping Rachel and screaming about how this was all her fault, rich coming from the person who masterminded the whole scam. Rachel, finally finding her backbone, started hitting back. Next thing I know, they're rolling around on my freshly mopped floors, the irony, pulling hair and screaming about who ruined whose life. My neighbors probably thought I was running some kind of fight club. While they were fighting, all their secrets came pouring out. Turns out Adriana had been stealing money from Rachel for years, using her cousin's credit cards, and manipulating her into sketchy schemes way before the whole Marcus situation. I let them go at it for a minute, okay, maybe two, it was entertaining, before stepping in because they were getting close to my new TV. I fired them on the spot, telling them they clearly weren't cut out for honest work. When they started begging for another chance, I just smiled and reminded them they had 5 minutes to leave before I called the cops. Watching them scramble out of my apartment, still yelling at each other, was better than any revenge I could have planned. Sometimes you just have to let karma do its thing. As for the Marcus situation, I finally made my decision. After all the begging and apologizing texts, seriously, my phone was blowing up worse than during our dating days. I chose not to take him back. Here's the thing, this is a man who threw away 4 years of marriage because his friend showed him some photos of me hugging coworkers. He didn't even try to have a conversation about it. Just went straight to divorce papers and kicking me out of our home. Sure, Adriana manipulated him, but she didn't force him to stop trusting his wife overnight. The fact that he could flip on me so quickly showed me everything I needed to know about our foundation. So here's my final update, I signed those divorce papers last week. Yeah, the same ones he originally thrust at me when he thought I was the bad guy. Marcus is still calling and texting, talking about how we can rebuild and how he'll make it up to me. But honestly, I'm good. My new apartment doesn't have his mom's weird angel figurines watching me from every corner. I can watch reality TV without him complaining, and I'm sleeping better than I have in months. Sometimes the best revenge isn't making your enemies suffer, it's moving on and thriving without them. So thank you all for being part of this crazy journey. Your support helped me stay strong when I was ready to cave. But before I go, I'll leave you with one last question, because apparently I'm still processing this. Would you have taken him back? The man I planned my future with turned out to be someone who trusted his manipulative best friend more than his wife, but he was also my best friend for so long. Tell me your thoughts, but make it quick because I've got a date with a bottle of wine that definitely won't judge me.